Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather forecast for the week of July 5th through the 11th, and in the middle of definitely the heavy weather of the Saturn Uranus square. And I just want to start that off, remember last week I said how Mars was going to trigger the that square by getting in the T-square with it, and really seeing a lot of structural stuff really start to fall apart. And we have such amazing examples in the world, and just showing the precariousness of many of the structures that we have in society and in civilization right now. And I'm sure most of us too are feeling that in our lives, that structures are falling apart. And remember last week with Mars, being the planet of action and activity, that is the one that can create a lot of physical type of events and trigger out other events to occur when an outer transit is running in the background for a long period of time. So that'll be times where you'll see a spike in those events. So when you think about, here we have the building collapsing in Florida, and the structure of the building is undermined, so there is that structure falling apart again. And then, the reality of, a lot of changes in the environment, the Uranus and Taurus in the Earth's environment, that can, get at the structure underneath things that are, in this case, especially near the seacoast, that can really undermine the structure of something that's man-made and been there for a long time, and now suddenly is disappearing. And then some other examples too is, the United States has been involved politically in Afghanistan, and now is pulling out. And immediately you see what happens when a move like this occurs, where there's a sudden change, the structure falls apart, and new people come in to grab that power and try to create a new structure very rapidly. And in this case, you see the Taliban is quickly coming back in to take in, to fill that power vacuum again and try to become the new Saturn, the new authority, the new structure. And then even in these ransomware attacks, when you think about that, once again, the structure of the internet is not as stable as we'd like to think that it is, and that it gives the opportunity for rebellious type people to make maneuvers electronically, Uranus, to cause a lot of distress with these ransomware things. So those are just three examples of many examples we can see of the structure falling apart quickly, and that really showing the Uranus Saturn square energy. So like I said last week, every week that any of the inner planets get involved with that in tough aspects with that square, we're going to see events trigger in relation to what those inner planets represent. And so with Mars, it was a lot of just literally physical form things that were falling apart. And interestingly enough, this week, how we're going to lead off is Venus becoming the planet that's going to get involved in a T-square with Saturn and Uranus, and therefore the tension will be really strong within the structures of relationships, within the structures of finance, within the structures of creativity and art. This is where we're going to see a lot of stress this week in the structures of those things, because those are the things that Venus is involved in, and therefore will bring to the forefront of that energy. And we will see some quickly changing things in those areas. So what's going to happen is it's really Tuesday through Thursday where it's exact. On Tuesday, we're going to get Venus in Leo now, opposite Saturn, exact. And then by Thursday, the exact square to Uranus. And just like last week with Mars, we'll be trining Chiron at the same time. So we'll bring in some possible benefits despite all of this, what's going on. So first off, like Venus, Saturn, is really, really a tough aspect even by itself. And it really can make you feel that certain relationships that you're involved in are just too stifling, are just too stuck, are forcing you to, deal with duties and obligations that basically are just no longer any fun, and can really make you assess your relationships that have developed into a partnership type form, which can be many types of relationships, and really give a sober assessment of whether that relationship is going to continue in its current form, or whether you're going to decide to basically withdraw from it. And it's interesting because once again, Venus Saturn can have us really react to the relationships that have been in our life a long time, where we just can't take anymore the restrictions and the inhibitions of that relationship anymore. It's just, and especially with Venus and Leo, Venus and Leo really wants to express itself, and shine as it is. So it's going to be really, really hard to hold that energy in. And it really, the reality is it can even be a lonely type of relationship, in the sense that you can decide to, take a step back from relationships and really just ponder, where they're at. So that really is something that we usually do in isolation. So, it's definitely there, that's going to be what we're really feeling. And what happens is we bring in the square to Uranus, and what people do is they go and seek out new experiences, new connections, new people, new things to do, in order to break away from that Venus Saturn that's holding us down. So it can be really interesting. It really, on one level, of course, it's going to cause a lot of distress in current relationships if that energy is kind of taken to this very rebellious or flippant kind of form, and disregarding of these old relationships in wanting to move forward from it. But on another level, personally, it can be very exciting to make new connections with new people and different people, and it can get really creative very quickly. New art, literally artistic type relationships can occur, but a lot of short-term electrifying connections for sure can occur under that Venus Uranus. But there is this instability and restlessness in our regular relationships. So what Venus Uranus will give us the impetus to do is to bring that stuff out into the open and to be dealt with. And it doesn't mean it's the end. It's the thing is, it's got to be like it's being held in, that Venus Saturn. And when it's in opposition, it's really both sides that are holding in things, that are feeling inhibited and restricted. So if we can bring that stuff up into the open, out on the open floor with the Venus Uranus, it gives it the ability to actually change and move forward. Now, many times it's not, we're not able. What we realize is that, we no longer have the stable connection that we were looking for, and maybe we need to move forward or move on from that relationship. But many times it also clears the deck and like builds a new foundation or starts a new foundation. So that's where the Venus trine the Chiron can come in, where it can really help heal relationships by getting that stuff in the open. But once again, also the Venus trine Chiron, this is a week really where like partnerships that are based on like creativity and art and aesthetic concerns, things like that, can really, reach new levels, like get new sparks from one another and, break things up and move things forward. So this week is a week where where we can watch like this stuff happen, probably in the big world too, like where we'll see a lot of like what we would term relationship or money or creativity type issues come up in relation to the Saturn Uranus square, and see like some of that stuff start to break down. And we are going to have this happen all year. This is really like, it's just we have this big storm over us. It's not going to go away, like, and speaking of storms, it's the weather, time of the season too, where many storms fire up. So like, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of that stuff, really challenging structural stuff, maybe a challenging electrical stuff with Uranus involved too. So that was the first of 4 things this week I really wanted to get to. And so a second thing is Mercury, and Mercury is doing some interesting things this week. Early in the week, actually, starting today, really Monday, and it's going to trigger the Neptune-Pluto sextile, which is still within orb and kind of a little bit tight right now. And it's interesting. It's in an interesting way, because the sextile is sweet itself, but Mercury is in a double stressful situation with it. And then later in the week, it's going to change signs. In the weekend, it's going to go into Cancer. So talk about Mercury a bit. So Mercury is going to square Neptune, and it's going to quincunx Pluto, and that's really interesting. Like, the square to Neptune is late Monday night, early Tuesday, and then right after that, Wednesday, is the quincunx to Pluto. So it's really bunched in the beginning of this week, the triggering of that Neptune Pluto sextile. And what I'm thinking is, the Mercury Neptune is really having a lot to do with like the confusion that's going on, and many people feel like right now, like it's just really hard to kind of figure out what to do in basic reality right now. There's a lot of misunderstandings, there's a lot of misinformation, deception. So it's really hard right now to make a solid decision and feel good about it. And a lot of that is based on seeing like our ideals like falling short in when we're trying to get them into this reality, and that may be part of the problem. The reality is just not accepting of those ideals. But when you mix in the quincunx to Pluto too, it gets like the mind can be a little bit tricky here, like thinking that maybe there's some kind of like backdoor or complicated or indirect or circuitous way of bringing those ideals still into the world, but like having to do it in what the mind feels is some kind of like secret, coercive, really kind of manipulative types of ways. So it's like a kind of weird energy to kind of play with, because the Neptune Pluto sextile itself is a positive energy of like wanting to transform things based on higher ideals. But like, when we see those things failing, and we're not able to like comprehend or understand what's going on, and there's a lot of deception going on, but yet we're feeling a lot of things because Mercury Neptune is open to psychic energy, we may still feel like, or we may get some ideas about like how we can still get what we want and change the world around us. And yet, like, it may be just as, like the tricky and complication and all that is just the way the deception is going on and the way the secret energy is going on. So like, even if your goal is positive behind it, the means is questionable, is really what this is showing us. And then on the weekend, Mercury goes into Cancer, and Mercury to me in Cancer is just not comfortable. Mercury in water signs is usually not comfortable right away, but like in Cancer, like it's almost like the mind and the intellect is at the whims of how we feel. So, which, at times can be good, but basically when Mercury's in Cancer, if you're feeling good, it's like everything is great that day, it's like, but if you're not feeling good, you can fall into this negative thinking trap where everything's half empty. So it's a kind of tricky thing there. And then the other thing about Mercury in Cancer is that it is really connected to the past and the ideas of the past and being stuck in the past, and can get really caught up in like heritage, even nationalism, actually on a more societal scale. And like that many times is like something that is a reaction to the fear of the change that's going on in the present. So it's going to like make us mentally and intellectually the next 2 or 3 weeks, starting next weekend, feel really like, maybe like circling the wagons somewhat, and really kind of getting into a defensive posture about our family, about our home, our heritage, our nation, things like that. And then, let's see, the other thing, there's 2 other things I want to mention. Now, of course, it's a new moon this week, and it's a new moon at 18 degrees Cancer. So we're more Cancer energy coming in. Now, remember, the United States itself is a Cancer country. So it's going to be really triggered. It's around this time of the year. July 4th is, the birthday. United States. So and the United States really acts like a Cancer country too. It's got this strong family nationalism in its heritage, and is very, very uber protective of what it perceives its family to be, and can be very defensive on that level. Now, this new moon is at 18 degrees of Cancer, and it doesn't really make any really super tight aspects. Now, since it's in the moon sign, the ruler of the chart is actually the moon too. So what does moon in Cancer want? Like new moon in Cancer. Remember, new moon is always about new beginnings. So look at where 18 degrees is of Cancer in your chart, and that's the house where you're going to see a lot of these new beginnings. And I really think, when you think about the positive, negative polarity of Cancer and what this can be, this is a big opportunity for many of us to start what would be like a new family, a new tribe, a new home, a new hearth, a new way of getting that kind of nurturing kind of energy. And then for other people, and or the other side of this, because we, usually, we're living in a dualistic reality, and we get both sides of these aspects in our lives through multiple ways if we're really sensitive to look at it. So what can the new moon in Cancer cause on that? What's more challenging side is there may be, new issues with our family, with our blood family, or with our homes, with our nation, that are going to be, challenging, like having to deal with, new issues and new things that they deal with. Now, like I said, it's not making any really tight aspects. The next aspect that this new moon is making will be a trine to Neptune, which it is loosely trine. So, there is chances that shows to appeal to our ideals again here and inject our ideals into, whatever this new beginning is having to do with Cancer type energy, and it has to do a lot with getting security, like what that Cancer moon really wants is like emotional input, so that's, what we're all kind of seeking here, and if we can't get it, what they say with children, if they can't get your attention positively, they'll go for it negatively. And that's how Cancer is too. Like if it can't get the emotional input it needs in a positive way, it will go for it in a negative way, so what it really wants is like that, feel that emotional input from its loved ones, to feel that stability from family, from home, from hearth, for having somewhere secure to come back to where your basic needs can be met. When or if you're not feeling that during this Cancer new moon, then the tendency is to more circle the wagons, keep it tight for you and your loved ones, and get into a defensive posture where you really don't allow more in, and can actually use manipulation, especially on the emotional level, to try to get what you want. So that's what we're all kind of seeking in this. And like I said, if you look at the house that that new moon is in, like for instance, if it's in your 11th house, then the new family, home, hearth energy will be coming through friends or groups, whereas let's say it was in your 5th house, it may be coming from a romantic partner or your children or some artistic or creative partnership that you have with someone. So I mean, look at that and just realize, this is it's a pretty clean new moon, because of not really having much influence from other planets. So it's really a good clean place to try to start this. And if there's that kind of thing going through your mind about new home, new family, that kind of thing, it really probably is a good month to start that process. Okay, and then the last thing I want to mention, and I mentioned it in the monthly because I kind of thought these were two relatively significant slow-moving aspects to asteroids that Neptune and Pluto were making this month and making exact hits on. And this is the week when Neptune hits its exact sextile to Ceres, which is really nice in the sense of when we're thinking about this full moon in Cancer, this new moon in Cancer, wanting security. And that's what Ceres is all about too. Ceres is that mothering, nurturing energy. And what's interesting is Neptune is those ideals I was talking about that, Mercury is kind of struggling with this week. But yet here we're seeing like maybe the sextile, there's an opportunity to actually, inject this energy and combine it with this new moon, this Neptune sextile series of like looking for new opportunities of like finding better ways to ideally get your needs met that are more sensitive to others in the environment too, and can be more productive and fertile in the long run. And once again, does feed that the Venus sextile Chiron too, of like of artistic and creative partnerships being very possible this week too, or this whole month really. And then the other one was Pluto trining Vesta, which I mentioned too. And Pluto trining Vesta is one of these things where we can really get transformation through the groups that we're involved with, especially on like what I would call like ritualistic type behavior, but like really can express like some really transformative energy through those groups, and like by dealing with things that maybe normally groups aren't that comfortable or people aren't that comfortable with dealing with, but feeling comfortable with certain people and allowing a lot of this deep stuff to come up and be transformed. It can be a very sexual energy, like a sexual healing energy. It can be a very artistically healing energy. It can be the energy of rebirth. It can be the energy of like a spiritual kind of energy, like there's like spirituality injected in all those things, and like really a dedication to an ideal, that's shared by many in the group. So it can be very, very transformative energy, and also like supportive of where you're wanting to go through a group and on a larger scale. So real interesting energy this week again, and mainly because of our Saturn Uranus. So the world and continues to change at a very rapid pace, and all we can do is really try to flow with it as best we can. We're all in the midst of this, and like I said, I know not only is this stuff happening on these societal levels, but it's happening in our personal lives too. I do a lot of charts, and I know that people are feeling a lot of things, feeling shaky and changing, and that's what's meant to be. That's what astrology helps us to understand, is that the energy we're feeling is what is meant to be. If we weren't feeling this, then something would be wrong. And we're in between this, these cusps between ages, and so it's very tumultuous times, especially when we have an aspect running in the background that says your structures are going to fall apart quickly this year. So that is what we are really in the midst of. All right, I'm Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It is on YouTube every week. Become a follower. You need an account on YouTube. You need to become a follower, and you need to turn your notifications on, and you'll know whenever I post it. The blog is also available on all kinds of podcasts. There's I think about 15 of them at least that have it. So just look up Astrological Winds channel, and you will be able to find a podcast to listen to it to. I do try to social media bomb people, but I miss people, and the list keeps getting bigger all the time. So it really would be helpful if you took care of that part yourself. And you can let me know if you don't want me to social media bomb you, too. I will try to remember. I can't promise that I will all the time, too. Also, it's a free service. I do get some donations, which is great. I think somebody donated last week. I'm not really clear because there was no message with it, but I appreciate that. My email is matthue823@gmail.com, and that is also my Venmo and Zelle accounts if you do want to give a donation. But really the best way to pay me back is to pass on the link to someone you know who might be interested in it. Get a lot of really positive. And then the other thing, of course, is if you need any kind of reading, I am available for that. Same thing, email me, matthue823@gmail.com, and we'll talk about prices, but natal birth charts, predictive, where we look for what your next year is going to look like, relationship charts, children's charts, election charts if you're looking for the best timing for something, horary charts if you have a question you really can't figure out the answer to, astrolocality if you're thinking about moving to another place, fixed star readings if you're looking at a deeper soul purpose kind of reading. So, and other things too. And there are classes available. I have 5 beginner classes up on, and I can once again email me, and I will let you access Dropbox. They're $25 a class. The whole zodiac's there. You can do them as one-offs, or if you want to do them as a student sequentially. And yeah, so that's about what I got. I'm also available for, lectures, events, things like that. So yeah, turn on the notifications and, spread the word. And otherwise, hang in there this week. Plant some new seeds in that area of, home and hearth for that new moon. And, just be prepared to watch, our relationships and things like that be the things that get stressed out this week by the Saturn Uranus square. All right, until next week, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I will see you then.